Welcome to the Bible Breakdown. It's a black man and woman in America who no longer identify as believers. This show contains adult languages, themes, and isn't meant for children. As black people, we respect the history of the black church in America, but its current state is massively abusive, and we think the Bible might be part of the problem. Listen and let us know what you think. Peace. Welcome back to another episode of the Bible Breakdown. I'm your host, Kat.
And I am TK.
Hello, TK.
Hello, Kat.
Man, are you ready to get into the Word?
I, in fact, am ready to get into the Word.
All
It is my favorite thing to do these days.
All right. Yeah, I like that positivity. So do you remember what we talked about on the last exciting episode of the Bible Breakdown?
I don't remember specifically off the top of my head, but I can get that because I have notes. That's what those are for.
Well, I can remind you real quick. Elisha.
Also, it's been a couple weeks since we've actually.
It has.
But this will be coming
Last
out.
time we talked about Elijah and the widow's oil, like they had an oil miracle. Even though there was a drought, a more impressive miracle would have been stopping the drought. But instead, he just made sure him and his lamb piece were okay. And then Elijah also raised her son from the dead by lying on top of him and putting his mouth on his mouth.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's
That
coming
was
back to
weird.
that was very weird. And then he purified a pot of stew, and there was a lot of. This was a food based. It was a very Food Network kind of thing. He also healed a guy. There was a greedy guy who ended up with leprosy. There was the miracle of the axe head that could have been easily explained with magnets, and the Aramean attack is thwarted.
Yes. I
Oh, and there
remember
was a
this.
siege. And how did we forget this? There was a siege and women were eating their babies.
Yeah, that was terrifying.
That was. So, yes, that's why. And once again, this is, just the best way.
Would you say that's promoting cannibalism?
I wouldn't say it's promoting it, because the key part of that story was just that everybody got mad at who was the king at the time.
That king was.
Everyone was like, this
Was
siege.
it Ben-Hadad.
Yeah,
of
everyone was
Aram.
like, this siege. Oh, Ben-Hadad. Yeah, everyone's like, this siege is bullshit because now we got the women eating each other's babies, and when that's like not great. So I don't think it was promoting it. I think it was clearly making the case that that was a bad thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, never mind.
But still, just absolutely horrific. Like, to imagine what steps of human suffering would lead you to the point where women are willing to eat their own children.
This just, I don't know. That's just not something I could see myself doing, regardless of what situation I'm in.
But once again, you've never been. When's the last time you were starving to death?
Yeah, that's why I say I've never been in that situation, but I don't know, man. I would like to think I'm wired a little bit differently.
You're not.
Like,
Everyone thinks it.
not when starving, but
Yes,
like
I think starvation is the key component, because your brain can't even operate properly when you're starving. You don't have enough calories for it.
I would never eat my children. Like,
You
that's
say that
off the
now.
table. I wouldn't.
I remember reading stories about this woman who was trying to escape North Korea with her daughter. This was like I was reading this article. It's like 20 years ago. And
It sounds like it's about to be sad.
it's super sad. She didn't eat the daughter, but she did talk about how, like, while they were in a field, she came across like some kind of like plant that was edible. And instead of like picking it and taking it to her daughter, like, she ate it really quick. And I remember thinking in that.
That is, that's funny. That's not funny, but that's like,
But I remember
that's a fucked up.
Right.
That's
And I
fucked
remember
up.
thinking in that moment, I'm like, damn, I'm like, would I, but I'm like, I've never been in that situation. I don't know what it's like to be on the brink of starvation. Like, are you even in control? Like, are you just on autopilot right then? Like, can you not even have the option of accessing like your higher thinking functions? Because you just literally don't have that. So yeah, I think it's really important to not let whenever possible, not let human beings get to starvation mode, because pretty much anything goes.
Yeah, don't do that, and also don't keep them poor.
Exactly.
Keep
That
them
messes up your
within a
psychology as well.
wage. Yeah.
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 Yep. Universal basic income, people. It's the wave of the future. I really want you to well, we'll talk about that. Let's get into the Bible, because we always put it off because we don't like doing it.
I like discussing it. It's just going through the actual text.
We don't like reading it. Don't front. Like, we don't, neither one, nobody, like, that's why nobody reads it. That's why we're doing it and why we're heroes. Like, we're gonna.
Well, somebody's reading it. It's just the masses are not reading it.
You're making my point. Like, so yes, we're the ones doing the hard work, getting in there. We're pretty much the X-Men.
We're doing it so you don't have to.
And we're using the New Revised Standard Version.
All right, with that being said, I guess I can jump into 2 Kings 7. But Elisha said, "Hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord, tomorrow about this time, a measure of choice meal shall be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria." Then the captain on whose hand the king leaned said to the man of God, "Even if the Lord were to make windows in the sky, could such a thing happen?" But he said, "You shall see it with your own eyes, but you shall not eat from it." The Arameans flee. Now there were 4 leprous men outside the city gate who said to one another, "Why should we sit here until we die? If we say, 'Let us enter the city,' the famine is in the city, and we shall die there. But if we sit here, we shall also die. Therefore, let us desert to the Aramean camp. If they spare our lives, we shall live, and if they kill us, we shall but die." So they arose at twilight to go to the Aramean camp. But when they came to the edge of the Aramean camp, there was no one there at all. For the Lord had caused the Aramean army to hear the sound of chariots and of horses, the sound of a great army, so that they said to one another, "The king of Israel has hired the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Egypt to fight against us." So they fled away in the twilight and abandoned their tents, their horses and their donkeys, leaving the camp just as it was, and fled for their lives. When these leprous men had come to the edge of the camp, they went into a tent, ate and drank, carried off silver, gold, and clothing, and went and hid them. They then came back, entered another tent, carried off things from it, and went and hid them. Then they said to one another, "What are we doing? What we are doing is wrong. This is a day of good news. If we are silent and wait until the morning light, we will be found guilty. Therefore, let us go and tell the king's household." So they came and called to the gatekeepers of the city and told them, We went to the Aramean camp, but there was no one to be seen or heard there. Nothing but the horses tied, the donkeys tied, and the tents as they were. Then the gatekeepers called out and proclaimed it to the king's household. The king got up in the night and said to his servants, "I will tell you what the Arameans have prepared against us. They know that we are starving, so they have left the camp to hide themselves in the open country, thinking, when they come out of the city, we shall take them alive and get into the city." One of the servants said, "Let some men take 5 of the remaining horses, since those left here will suffer the fate of the whole multitude of Israel that have perished already. Let us send and find out." So they took 2 mountain men, and the king sent them after the Aramean army, saying, "Go and find out." So they went after them as far as the Jordan. The whole way was littered with garments and equipment that the Arameans had thrown away in their haste. So the messengers returned and told the king. Then the people went out and plundered the camp of the Arameans. So a measure of choice meal was sold for shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. Now the king had appointed the captain on whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. The people trampled him to death in the gate, just as the man of God had said when the king came down to him. For when the man of God had said to the king, 2 measures of barley shall be sold for a shekel, and a measure of choice meal for a shekel, about this time tomorrow in the gate of Samaria, the captain had answered the man of God, even if the Lord were to make windows in the sky, could such a thing happen? And he had answered, you shall see it with your own eyes, but you shall not eat from it. It did indeed happen to him. The people trampled him to death in the gate. Whoa, thanks be God.
So, was there a miracle in there somewhere?
I'm not sure what happened on that second half. I got the first part, like the leprous man were, they were in the desert and they came across the tent. But that second part I was kind of confused on, so I'm gonna clear that up with notes in a second.
Okay, I'll tell you what I got from it, because I'll be honest with you, I was a little confused myself and had to kind of like, wait, what? Okay, so the siege is still going on. There were some leprous men outside the gate who were just like, man, we got to make something shake. Why just stay here and die? Let's just go just see what we can make happen. And then I wasn't super clear why the Arameans like deserted. Okay, maybe that was the miracle. For the Lord had caused the Aramean army to hear the sound of chariots and horses and sounds of great armies, so that they said to one another, like, so they ran off because they were scared for their lives.
I did read that.
Okay,
yes.
So I'm taking it that was just the Lord, like, I guess, making them hear that. Once again, though, much better miracle, ending the siege or ending the drought so people aren't starving anymore. Like, that seems to be the big issue overall. But anyway, the whole thing was supposed to be about how there was this prophecy about how Odu, then the captain, the king's captain of the army was like, what do you mean we're gonna have like barley for a shekel or whatever? And and he was like, you're gonna see it but you won't eat it. And then it's true, because he was trampled to death like people at a Diddy concert in the 90s.
Did that actually happen? That's damn.
Yeah.
Getting trampled to death is fucking crazy.
It's very I mean, not common, but listen, when people go on survival mode, fuck it.
Well,
that's why I don't like large crowds, by the way. Whenever you hear me say like I don't like large crowds, like I can't help but think about getting trampled to death.
What is the context of the Diddy situation? Was like they're shooting or something?
I'll see if I can find the story later, because it literally was in the 1990s. So I don't want to give you any bad information. The most I can remember is I think it happened in Harlem, and it was somehow like he wasn't in compliance with, like the fire marshal stuff. So, and then I don't know if a fight or a fire or something broke out, and then people started stampeding because he was found liable. But another thing is he probably had event insurance.
Okay, yeah, they brought this up around the time the shit happened with the Travis Scott situation.
And once again, we're not here to talk about Diddy.
We won't, but we will put it in the notes. So I'll put a link in the notes. So if anybody wants to go check it out.
But yeah. They're basically the captain of the army, because I feel like the message of this story was the captain got killed because he doubted Elisha's prophecy.
That always happens.
Mm-hmm.
You doubt, you get killed.
I feel like Elisha was out here murking people.
Yeah, I felt that. And then when the leprous man came across the tent and shit, I was like, I feel like they just killed these guys.
Well, no, I think if you went into like an army camp, I don't think like 4 leprous dudes fought like soldiers. I think for whatever reason, like, I don't know if this is a real story, like in real life, if I try to give it some context, if they stumbled across like a deserted like camp that still had like a lot of like loot in it. I mean, like, I can see how for one they started getting paranoid, like, shit, they're gonna kill us. Let's take this to the king.
Fair.
So,
Fair.
I don't know. Once again, this just kind of reminds me, I'm gonna put this in the notes too, but I sent you a link to a podcast I listened to the other day from What's this dude's name? I guess I can just look at the link I sent you.
Yeah. Well, the thing I got was about white evangelical Christians are
in support of
some of the
Israel.
biggest supporters.
Right. It's just whenever you take biblical literalism, it just ends up being insane. So it was from, this was from Code Switch podcast. White evangelical Christians are some of Israel's biggest supporters. Why? And so you have like senators like quoting the Bible and stuff. And like, it's this idea that like if you take the Bible seriously, which you shouldn't, it's wildly incoherent, but you end up with these disastrous policies, which is why we are so entrenched in the Middle East and with Israel fighting the Palestinian people. There's no good reason for it other than, well, Bible says Israel and they say Israel, so we have to, God will bless who bless Israel and curse who curse Israel. It's like, and that's just like, these are just some things people made up. There's no reason to put a whole lot of weight behind it, like for real. But I don't know, the way that they laid it out, I love Code Switch. It's like an NPR show. They lay stuff out so well, so it's so orderly put, but it just reminds me of how crazy things can get when we start following these quote-unquote holy men or these prophets. Like, that just almost always leads to disaster because they're not based in reality.
I agree, which is, I mean, one of my biggest beefs with all of this is that it's like the phrase when you're at work and people will be like, we've always done it this way. I just don't think we should live like that. I think that getting too complacent in life and never questioning things actually does more harm than good in the long run.
Agree.
Into who? Yeah.
All right. Well, you ready for some more?
Do we want me to?
Oh yes. You read your breakdown because, like I said, I'm sure I missed a lot in that because it was rather convoluted.
Well, this is my breakdown according to Gemini, Google Gemini. So, 2 Kings 7, they have it broken down as Elijah, prophet of God, predicts a sudden abundance of food at the city gate the very next day, which seems impossible given the siege. An officer doubts him. We talked about that. Meanwhile, outside the city, 4 lepers decide to take a chance. They reasoned that they would die anyway if they stay, so they venture out to the Aramean camp to surrender. To their surprise, they find the camp deserted. God has caused the Arameans to hear the sounds of a large approaching army, leading them to believe that they were under attack by a powerful alliance. In their panic, they fled the camp. They fled the camp, leaving everything behind. The lepers enter the camp, take what they can, and return to the city to report the news. The Israelites cautiously investigate and discover the abandoned Aramean camp. They find plentiful provisions fulfilling Elisha's prophecy. Unfortunately, one of the officers who doubted Elisha earlier tries to take advantage of the situation, but is trampled to death in the ensuing chaos as Elisha had warned. So, yeah.
Okay, so that was pretty much it. Neato. All right, I'm gonna just read 2 Kings 8. The Shulam.
Go for it.
The Shunammite's woman's land restored. Now Elijah had said to the woman whose son he had restored to life, "Get up and go with your household and settle wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine, and it will come to the land for 7 years." So the woman got up and did according to the word of the man of God. She went with her household and settled in the land of the Philistines for 7 years. At the end of 7 years, when the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, she set out to appeal to the king for her house and her land. Now the king was talking with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, "Tell me all the great things that Elisha has done." While he was telling the king how Elisha had restored a dead person to life, the woman whose son he had restored to life appealed to the king for her household and for her house and her land. Gehazi said, "My lord king, here is the woman, and here is her son who Elijah restored to life." When the king questioned the woman, she told him. So the king appointed an official for her, saying, "Restore all that was hers, together with all the revenue of the field from the day that she left the land until now." Death of Ben-Hadad. Elisha went to Damascus while King Ben-Hadad of Aram was ill. When it was told him, the man of God has come here, the king said to Hazael, take a present with you and go to meet the man of God. Inquire of the Lord through him whether I shall recover from this illness. So Hazael went to meet him, taking a present with him and all kinds of goods of Damascus, 40 camel loads. When he entered, he stood before him, saying, your son, King Ben-Hadad of Aram, has sent me to you, saying, shall I recover from this illness? Elisha said to him, go, say to him, you shall certainly recover, but the Lord has shown me that he shall certainly die. He fixed his gaze and stared at him until he was ashamed. Then the man of God wept. Hazael asked, why does my Lord weep? He answered, because I know that the evil you will do to the people of Israel, you will set their fortresses on fire. You will kill their young men with the sword, dash in pieces their little ones, and rip up their pregnant women. Hazael said, what is your servant? Who is a mere dog that he should do this great thing? Elisha answered, the Lord has shown me that you are to be king over Aram. Then he left Elisha and went to his master Ben-Hadad, who said to him, what did Elisha say to you? He answered, he told me that you would certainly recover. But the next day he took the bed cover and dipped it in water and spread it over the king's face until he died. And Hazael succeeded him. Jehoram reigns over Judah. On the 5th year of King Joram, son of Ahab of Israel, Jehoram, son of King Jehoshaphat of Judah, began to reign. He was 32 years old when he became king. He reigned 8 years in Jerusalem. He walked in the way of the kings of Israel as the house of Ahab had done, for the daughter of Ahab was his wife. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. Yet the Lord would not destroy Judah for the sake of his servant David, since he had promised to give a lamp to him and his descendants forever. On his days, Edom revolted against the rule of Judah and set up a king of their own. Then Joram crossed over to Zaire with all his chariots. He set out by the night, attacked the Edomites and their chariot commanders who had surrounded him. But his army fled home. So Edom had been in revolt against the rule of Judah to this day. Libnah also revolted at the same time. Now the rest of the acts of Joram and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? So Joram slept with his ancestors and was buried with them in the city of David. His son Ahaziah succeeded him. Ahaziah reigns over Judah. In the 12th year of King Joram, son of Ahab of Israel, Ahaziah, son of King Jehoram of Judah, began to reign. Ahaziah was 22 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 1 year in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Athaliah, a granddaughter of King Omri of Israel. He also walked in the ways of the house of Ahab, doing what was evil in the sight of the Lord, as the house of Ahab had done. For he was son-in-law to the house of Ahab. He went to Joram, son of Ahab, to wage war against King Hazael of Aram of Gothmoth Gilead, where the Arameans wounded Joratham. King Joratham returned to be healed in Jezreel in the wounds that the Arameans had inflicted on him at Ramah when he fought against King Ahaziel of Aram. King Ahaziah, son of Jehoram of Judah, went down to see Joram, son of Ahab, in Jezreel because he was wounded. Oh, thanks be to God. These names. I was thinking I need maybe some Barbies or G.I. Joes as action figures so I can keep track of who is who. But yes. I do remember. Do you remember this story from First Kings?
No, absolutely not.
Damn it, T. Okay. This story was definitely in First Kings. I'm going to find it while you tell me your thoughts about what I just read.
Okay. Well, you lost me on the second half, but from the first half, so what I gathered.
No, it wasn't me. It was the Bible. That was an excellent reading on my part.
Yes, it was. It was great. 10 out of 10. So what I got from the first, so the Shumanite woman, she essentially was trying to regain her land. She left for a while. She had to come back, and then she basically had to convince the king, or that she wanted her land back. I don't know. That's kind of what I got, but yeah.
Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm in First Kings trying to find this story again because yeah, there is a bunch of stuff about Elijah. That's what's crazy though. This is Elijah and Ahab. My whole thing is like, did the Bible mess up the names because they sound very similar? Like a lot of this stuff.
Your ability to remember this stuff is amazing. Like I thought I had a pretty good memory, which I do, but I mean, I guess not when it comes to inconsequential
I've
things.
said it over and over again on this podcast. I'm better than you. Why is it so hard to wrap your mind around?
Okay. That's the words we choose to use.
No, I'm like I said, part of why I'm like my memory is like this was going to evangelical school. Like this stuff is drilled into you. Like there's so much repetition and like
Now I'm starting to doubt my Catholic education because
it's
I
not
don't
the
feel
best
like-
education. They just have better marketing. Like I think my parents probably got a better education than me in the public school systems because they went to all black schools and there weren't a lot of black schools, so it attracted the best talent from the country. So like, and my dad definitely got a better science education than I did. I'm very fortunate that my dad was into science and taught me science because I didn't get it because evangelicals hate science because it proves them wrong all the time. Okay, you know what? I'm going to look this up some other time so because I don't have time to reread the stuff and it's confusing I feel like in First Kings, because we have Ahab and Ben-Hadad in First Kings 20, like doing stuff. So basically what I'm getting is that First Kings and Second Kings aren't necessarily sequential, but they're two versions of the same story. And it looks like maybe Elijah and Elisha are juxtapositioned in some of them. Like they might not be totally sure of what's what.
Oh, so it's like a Godfather 2 way of storytelling.
No.
You just said they're juxtaposition.
I'm just saying like they're not, but even with that, that's being told sequential and they don't contradict each other. Like this is like two versions of the same story. Like the first Godfather isn't the story of the first Godfather.
I didn't say the first Godfather. Well, the first I said Godfather Part 2.
Oh, which shows the staggered, but those are different time periods. This is the same time period. So like where it's but that's what I'm.
Okay, so is it more like Jackie Brown?
I haven't seen Jackie Brown in a long time, so I can't say. Right. But maybe where we're seeing the same story, but from different people's point of views. Is that what you're saying?
That's Jackie Brown.
Well,
that's
I'm just saying Godfather 2, we're going back in time because we see Vito as a young man and.
Well, you said juxtaposition, so.
But juxtaposition just means like it's something unusual. Like you're seeing something that's usually not like it's like seeing.
I thought that always meant across from.
No, not always. Like juxtaposition is seeing something in something that it doesn't belong. So maybe if you saw like, I'm trying to think of something not offensive. Okay, so maybe like remember in Fantasia where there were those like dancing hippos, but they're ballerinas. That's a juxtaposition because hippos aren't seen as graceful. So that's why it's interesting and, it creates a contrast because it's like, oh, here's it.
Fantasia is a fucking amazing.
Yes, it is. But anyway, back to the Shulamite woman getting her shit back. I think there was a similar story to this. And there was the story of Ben-Hadad because didn't he fall? I feel like he fell through like the floor and got hurt. And he wanted to send a message out like, am I going to recover from this? And then Elijah was like, yeah, but you're still going to die. And so, but it looks like he was murdered. Like, I don't feel like in the first story, it doesn't show because Hazael, he was like, oh, but but the next day he took the bed cover, dipped it in water and spread it over the king's face until he died. And it sounds like Hazael killed him, right?
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
I feel like murders usually deserve a little more time, but it's not, and it looked like Elisha predicted it.
It happens so much now.
And my whole thing is like, it feels like Elijah was in this story so that's why this is confusing. I'm going to need some more time to look into this because I'm like, wait a minute, what? And these stories are just stories. I don't know. And the fact that even in the beginning, he predicted that there was going to be a famine for 7 years, so she should get, boogie, like get out of here. And it's like, why is God allowing this? Like, it's like, oh, because Ahab, he started, going to old ways, like he was worshiping other gods, but I just didn't kill him because, like, he was from David, and I'm still really cool with David, even though why? Like, he killed those people I hated.
I feel like God, I don't know, probably for the last few books has just really not been as
He's been phoning it in.
He's more like, yeah,
yeah, he has.
It's just like people are essentially doing what they want to do.
Well, and because the only thing he's requiring of people is grain and meat sacrifices for the Levites. And then whenever people worship,
he gets his
yeah,
cut.
but he gets mad when people start worshiping other gods and the resources and attention start going there. So to me, it's just very clear that it's about keeping power in the hands of these religious figures.
Yeah, this continues to promote not only abusive behavior to me, but also jealousy. Like, which I don't think is a healthy emotion when not processed in a constructive way.
Right, because it's perfectly natural to feel envious, but when you're actually like burning with hatred and jealousy, it's like, how dare you give those other gods attention? I'm God. You go into your temple prostitutes and our what was that one? Astarte poles. And wouldn't it be fun if Astarte poles were just like stripper poles, like they were just getting down? It's fun to dance on a pole.
I've never done it, so I don't know. It looks great though. I enjoy when women do it. So
yeah, it's pretty great.
Shout out to the strippers.
Yeah, makes this world just a little brighter. Okay, well, this is a long one.
2 Kings 9, anointing of Jehu. The prophet Elisha called a member of the company of prophets and said to him, "Gird up your loins, take this flask of oil in your hand, and go to Ramoth Gilead. When you arrive, look there for Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi. Go in and get him to leave his companions and take him into an inner chamber. Then take the flask of oil, pour it on his head, and say, 'Thus says the Lord, I anoint you king over Israel.' Then open the door and flee. Do not linger." So the young prophet, went to Ramoth Gilead. He arrived while the commanders of the army were in council, and he announced, "I have a message for your commander." "For which one of us?" asked Jehu. "For you, commander." So Jehu got up and went inside. The young man poured the oil in his head, saying to him, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I anoint you king over the people of the Lord over Israel. You shall strike down the house of your master Ahab, so that I may avenge on Jezebel the blood of my servants, the prophets, and the blood of all the servants of the Lord. For the whole house of Ahab shall perish, I will cut off from Ahab every male, bond or free in Israel. I will make the house of Ahab like the house of Jeroboam son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha son of Ahijah. The dogs shall eat Jezebel in the territory of Jezreel, and no one shall bury her." Then he opened the door and fled. When Jehu came back to his master's officers, they said to him, "Is everything all right? Why did that madman come to you?" He answered them, "You know the sort and how they babble." They said, "Liar! Come on, tell us." So he said, "This is just what he said to me. 'Thus says the Lord, I anoint you king over Israel.'" Then hurriedly they all took their cloaks and spread them for him on the bare steps, and they blew the trumpet and proclaimed, "Jehu is king." Joram of Israel killed. Thus Jehu, son of Jehoshaphat, son of Nimshi, conspired against Joram, with all Israel had been on guard of Ramoth Gilead against King Hazael of Aram, but King Joram had returned to be healed in Jezreel of the wounds that the Arameans had inflicted on him when he fought against King Hazael of Aram. So Jehu said, "If this is your wish, then let no one slip out of the city to go and tell the news in Jezreel." Then Jehu mounted his chariot and went to Jezreel, where Joram was lying ill. King Ahaziah of Judah had come down to visit Joram. In Jezreel, the sentinel standing on the tower spied the company of Jehu arriving and said, "I see a company." Joram said, "Take a horseman and send to meet him and let him say, 'Is it peace?'" So the horseman went to meet him. He said, "Thus says the king, 'Is it peace?'" Jehu responded, "What have you to do with peace? For fall in behind me." The sentinel reported saying the messenger reached them, but he is not coming back. Then he sent out a second horseman who came to them and said, "Thus says the king, 'Is it peace?'" Jehu answered, "What have you to do with him? What have you to do with peace? Fall in behind me." Again, the sentinel report he reached them, but he is not coming back. It looks like the driving of Jehu, son of Nimshi, for he drives like a maniac. Joram said, "Get ready," and they got his chariot ready. Then King Joram of Israel and King Ahaziah of Judah set out, each in his chariot, and went to meet Jehu. They met him at the property of Naboth the Jezreelite. When Joram saw Jehu, he said, "Is it peace, Jehu?" He answered, "What peace can there be so long as the many whoredoms and sorceries of your mother Jezebel continue?" Then Joram reined about and fled, saying to Ahaziah, "Treason, Ahaziah!" Jehu drew his bow with all his strength and shot Joram between the shoulders, so that the arrow pierced his heart and he sank in his chariot. Jehu said to his aide Bidkar, "Lift him out and throw him on the plot of ground belonging to Naboth the Jezreelite. For remember, when you and I rode side by side behind his father Ahab, how the Lord uttered this oracle against him. For the blood of Naboth, and for the blood of his children that I saw yesterday, says the Lord, I swear I will repay you on this very plot of ground. Now therefore lift him out and throw him on the plot of ground in accordance with the word of the Lord." Ahaziah of Judah killed. When King Ahaziah of Judah saw this, he fled in the direction of Beth Hagan. Jehu pursued him, saying, "Shoot him also!" And they shot him in the chariot at the ascent of Gur, which is by Ibleam. Then he fled to Megiddo and died there. His officers carried him in a chariot to Jerusalem and buried him in his tomb with his ancestors in the city of David. In the 11th year of Joram, son of Ahab, Ahaziah began to reign over Judah. Jezebel's violent death. When Jehu came to Jezreel, Jezebel heard of it. She painted her eyes and adorned her head and looked out of the window. As Jehu entered the gate, she said, "Is it peace, Zimri, murderer of your master?" He looked up to the window and said, "Who is on my side?" "Who?" 2 or 3 eunuchs looked out at him. He said, "Throw her down." So they threw her down. Some of her blood spattered on the wall and on the horses which trampled on her. Then he went in and ate and drank. He said, "See to that cursed woman and bury her, for she is a king's daughter." But when they went to bury her, they found no more of her than the skull and feet and the palms of her hands. When they came back and told him, he said, "This is the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant Elijah the Tishbite in the territory of Jezreel. The dog shall eat the flesh of Jezebel. The corpse of Jezebel shall be like dung on the field in the territory of Jezreel, so that no one can say, 'This is Jezebel.'" Ooh, thanks be to God.
They did not like Jezebel. I gotta tell you, at least, I mean, this one was pretty action packed. I wasn't completely able to follow all the characters. Like I said, I'm gonna need some sort of like stand-in, like, so I can follow the plot or whatever. But I also kind of don't care. These are just people killing themselves over resources and telling them God told them to.
Yeah, this is, I have nothing new to say. I thought this actually was going to be a little bit more interesting, because Jehu, when he's taken into that room and anointed as king, And then he comes back out like, yeah, I don't know what that crazy guy was talking about. He said I'm king, but he was like, I thought actually he was about to be like a reasonable guy. Like he said I'm king, but like
you know how
I
these
don't
guys
know what
do.
the fuck he's talking about. Yeah, I thought like, oh, this is really interesting. Like one person is like, yeah, I'm not listening to that, and he totally just does exactly what everybody else does.
It's hard to be an outlier. Like, because really, what's the move? These people are dehydrated and they have weapons. Like, and they haven't eaten in a while. Like, it's hard to be reasonable. Like, we have all, like, for the most part, we're around pretty well hydrated, well fed people, and they tend to be irrational as hell. So just imagine what it's like when you haven't washed in a couple days, but everybody's got leprosy. Chicks are eating the babies. Like a hell.
I mean, to go back to your point of them being irrational as well, that's because people just don't want to do the work, which in 2024 is kind of crazy because we have all these resources, but we also have so many conveniences where you don't have to, like, you don't have to fact check anything.
I mean, you should, but you don't have to, I guess. But I think for so many people, at least I'll say this for me, a moment of vulnerability. I think one of the reasons I may not have accepted like what I was intuiting as the truth, which is that this Bible isn't what they're claiming it is. A lot of the reasons I fought it for so many years is because I didn't like what that would mean for the changes I'd have to make in my life. Like, I'd have to relearn a lot of stuff. I'd have to reject a tradition that's been a part of my family for hundreds of years. Like, that's not a small thing to do. So for a lot of people, it's like, I don't want to risk like losing my community. I don't want to risk the comfort I get from thinking this is true, because I did get an immense amount of comfort thinking like, even if I die, I get to go to heaven and see all my family members. Like, that's a hard thing for people to like give up, no matter how true it is. It's the same thing that's why it's the same thing as Santa Claus.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was saying this back in 2022. Like, I empathize, and 2023. I empathize with people because that is hard to give up pretty much everything you know and ostracize yourself. And I've also admitted this. I feel like at least on my mom's side, just have a more accepting family, which I didn't realize. Again, it always blows my mind how that is not the case for everybody else. Like, my family would say they're like Christian, but they're really just kind of pseudo Christian. They pray when it's,
yeah, culturally
and stuff like that. Yeah, culturally Christian. Like, my grandma does go to church a lot now, like pretty much every Sunday and all that. But for a large part of my life, she wasn't doing that. And so, even though she remained believing in God, and it's just, I don't know, man, I can't get down with this shit. Like, it seems so much of a limitation and a hindrance to life more than it actually helps your life.
Yes, and that's what I've been saying since 2001, which is whatever good you get out of it doesn't outweigh the fact that, once again, even in this chapter, we've gotten so like used to it. They mentioned slavery because they were saying like everybody bond and free. It's like that's just another way. Bond is just like slaves, so you're held in bondage. So once again, that's one of the things too that's why the that Code Switch episode was so good, because so much of this like is scary to me. The fact that people say that they want this, like they want to live in like a Christian country that's like led by the Bible. It's like, you don't even know what that means, because then there's a lot of other stuff in here too that because it's been told that it's like, no, like Christianity is what helped black people get freedom. It's like, it just so happened people on both sides were Christian. There's nothing in Christianity that makes people like an abolitionist or, anti-slavery. Like, it's just something something that they've come to in their heart. The Bible is actually very, very pro-slavery. So if you want to live your life like the way these ancient Israelites were, I mean, be prepared for some like insanity. Like, this stuff is an insanity. They were sacrificing like their kids. Like, it was bad.
Yeah.
But they always try to make it seem, oh, because it was funny, like, because they were talking about Jerry Falwell on the Code Switch episode, and just about his big enemy were human secularists. Human.
I don't know who Jerry Falwell
You
is.
kind of do. Did you ever watch The People versus Larry Flint?
No.
The guy who started Hustler.
Larry Falwell is the guy who started Hustler?
No, Larry Flint is the guy who started Hustler. Okay. Jerry Falwell is the guy who was fighting him, and is why they had to go to court and stuff.
I didn't even know that. See, I never even knew that happened.
You should watch. You would like that movie. It's a very good film with Woody Harrelson playing Larry Flint. It's real good, but it's.
I like Woody Harrelson. I'm sold.
Okay, so but that's the thing. So much of our politics and sort of public thought is shaped by people we don't even know their names. They work really hard to make sure that people associate family values with Christianity, but in real life that doesn't look like love. Like this, the Bible, God is not an example of love. It's an example of domination. So if you're paying attention, like, of course it's billed as, it's very much like pimping. It's like, yeah, we're going to be a family. We're going to build this. But unless I'm getting paid, this shit is temporary.
Oh, the Bible people in there.
But this sounds harsh. I know what we're saying sounds harsh, but you have to realize, like, what's actually being said in this book, pretty harsh.
Yeah, I don't think I could say it any better.
So, I've always been taught that Elijah and Elisha were the good guys, but to me, there hasn't been anything, even if they were communicating with the God of the universe, there's nothing that communicates to me that they're in the interest of helping people. Like, that's what secular humanism is, that Jerry Falwell was fighting against, which is because and I even learned, because a lot of the stuff I already knew from the Code Switch, it just hadn't heard it like put in a timeline so well. But the fact that, like, these groups, they always fight so hard against programs like Head Start because they bill it as like federally mandated preschool, which it's not. Like, they always bill it as it's going to be this scary thing that takes you away from your kids. Like, they always try to make education look so scary because the realistic, like, because they said the biggest threat to them was basically education. Like, people, when they learn, they're like, oh, I don't really need these bad explanations. I have good explanations as for why there's thunder and lightning. It's not because God's mad at us.
That just very much triggers me.
I'm sorry. Well, let's bring it down. But that's why when I suggest everybody listen to it, that Code Switch episode, I think it's only maybe 30, 40 minutes. And it really does, for people who are confused about, like, sort of why there's all this U.S. policy around supporting Israel, it's not backed up by any kind of rationality other than, like, people who believe in biblical literalism. So that's not even all Christians. Not all Christians think this is literally true. So, but for people who do, they think that Israel, and it's not because they love Jewish people so much, it's because they want the apocalypse to come, and that means Jesus is going to come back and kill all the Jews who didn't believe in him.
Which brings me to my other problem, because some people will take this literal, some people don't. So we can't even get on the same page about how we interpret the word.
I will say 2 Kings does seem to be giving more details and names than 1 Kings did. I'm gonna see it, maybe if I can find a YouTube video of someone explaining, like, how to parallel read 1 and 2 Kings, because this is bizarre. But next episode of Bible Breakdown, we're gonna read 2 Kings 10 through 12. There's going to be a massacre of Ahab's descendants, a slaughter of the worshipers of Baal, and the death of Jehu. How cheerful. Athaliah reigns over Judah. There's another, and then he dies. And then the temple's repaired. And the death of Joash. So, yeah, we have that to look forward to.
Okay, well, this was a more action-packed episode. So
Yeah, that's not
I guess we
bad.
have that.
Oh man. Whew. Yes. Well, it's a beautiful sunny day here. I'm gonna try to make the most of it, knowing that my body belongs to me and I don't have to like restrict my actions because of this ancient book that got printed first.
Yeah. Well, I love that for you.
Thank you.
I am going to try to use my day to just be productive and get some shit done.
Fabulous.
But in the meantime, your body belongs to you. Be curious, not judgmental. Bible Breakdown Podcast at gmail.com. Also, follow us on Instagram at Bible Breakdown Podcast or on Twitter at Bible Break Pod. Peace.